Welcome to the session on cybercrime investigation. The objectives of this class is to understand the importance of the network forensics and list hardware devices that contain network logs, which are very important for forensic investigators, and review of IP4 and IP6. And in another presentation, I actually uploaded the review of the OSI model, and we'll talk about understanding the mistakes when made when investigating networks, and understand also Windows artifacts. Network forensics is actually extremely important, but only a few people understand its importance. This domain of forensics is so important because of the explosion in the network breaches. We all hear a lot about the network breaches in every week, and the impact of those network breaches are almost immeasurable. So when we talk about the effect of these breaches, the Sony PlayStation breach in 2011 estimated to have cost about $170 million, and NotPetya ransomware attack of 2017 cost Merck an estimated $1.3 billion. We have relied on security and general information technology personnel to handle the cybersecurity incidents. But it is imperative that organizations think more in terms of in-house forensic investigators who have the legal and technical expertise to adequately handle these breaches, especially with the risk of civil lawsuits. Network forensics have actually two major components. The first one is the real-time capture and analysis of the data, and the second one is the retroactive analysis of capture data. So in the real-time capture data and analysis, there are tremendous resources which are required to perform real-time analysis. So it consumes a lot of resource to capture the data in real time. You need to have a large storage and a lot of horsepower, such as RAM, to actually collect those data, which is unmeasurably can be transmitted from one large network to another large network. And to cater to the large storage requirement, you could use RAID, redundant array of independent disks, to store the electronically collected network data. Optimally, you will use a RAID 0, which allows for higher performance and large storage, and also low redundancy. And Kali Linux, for instance, is an open Linux tool that's often used for real-time package capture. So there are many tools. So sometimes the forensic investigator use open source tools, and sometimes other licensed tools are also available. There are many publicly available major network forensic tools, such as NK's Endpoint Investigator, RSA NetWitness, and many others. And there are also indeed open source tools such as TCP dump, WinDump, and Explico, Wireshark, and Kismet, and TCP Flow, and Etherkit, which are very successful network forensic tools, or tools that can be used for network forensics. And a packet sniffer records packets observed on a network interface. A packet analyzer looks at packets and tries to make some inferences about what they contain, and packet sniffers are used to capture data packets on a wireless or wired network. Wireshark and TCP dump are examples of packet sniffers. The network interface card on, for instance, your computer only responds to packets addressed to its MAC address, but a packet sniffer, on the other hand, puts the network interface card into promiscuous mode. What actually this means is that promiscuous mode enables network interface card to listen to the communications broadcast on a network regardless of the intended recipient. So the promiscuous mode enables the uh, NIC to collect all the packages from the network, and packets sniffers are used in conjunction with protocol analyzers by network investigators. And a protocol analyzer is used to analyze and interpret traffic all over the network. When learning about network forensics, it's imperative to learn about devices that have logging capabilities and therefore contain historical evidence for investigators. And investigators must know all of the different times for each networking server or device. So investigators can or should be aware of the importance of this some of the uh, network devices that has valuable information for forensic investigators, such as proxy servers, web servers, DHCP servers, SMTP servers, DNS servers, and routers and switches. Switch hubs and IDS and firewalls are all important parts of the network, and they all have valuable information for the network investigators. A proxy server is a computer or a network device that can act on behalf of other computers to request content from the internet or an intranet. Instead of connecting directly to a server that can fulfill a request for a resource, such as a file or a web page, the client directs the request to the proxy server, such as in this example, uh, and uh, and then the proxy server actually evaluates the requests and performs the required network transaction on the requested website. So the proxy server is actually in the middle, in which means the internet client sends the packets to the targeted website through a proxy server. So what this means is that the web server will actually only have the IP address of the proxy server, not the internet client. So this is important to know because the suspect might use another user's computer or maybe multiple computers as an intermediary to request information from a server. And hence, investigators might seize a web server hosting illicit photographs of minors, for instance, in this case, but the client request to download pages or images might show the IP address of unsuspecting individuals. So the investigator might end up with a result of not having the actual suspects computer, or the actual suspect may even get away by hiding its IP address. A web server stores and serves up HTML documents and related media resources in response to client requests. When you type in, for instance, a URL into your web browser and then hit enter, a data packet is sent to the web server that includes your IP address and in turn the web page. And it's sent to your computer and saved in cache through the transaction. So your client sends an information to a web server and receives website information from the web server, and then you can, for instance, view the HTML documents. Web server forensics have actually importance in cybercrime investigations, and if an investigator can analyze client user requests from the web server logs when reviewing it, the following information can actually be obtained, such as the date and time of the transaction, source IP address, which leads to the suspect, and HTTP source code from the web server, and resource requested by the client. So you may end up having a lot of information about the transaction made by the client or the suspect. On the client side, a web browser is used to render the hypertext markup language. And primarily, hypertext markup language means that it is a static website that gives you information about the header and the text body, just the simple information, static information from the web server is retrieved. And also, we primarily use FTP, file transfer protocol, to securely upload files to a web server. So as an investigator, you might want to check the FTP connections between the web server and the client computer. A web browser is used to actually work with a DNS server to resolve the DNS addresses. And also, a web browser can make hypertext transfer protocol requests and download resources. You may download several files into your computer, and also displays the contents of the file with browser help objects. What DNS means is that computers actually use only numbers. And when users type in names, domain names, into the URL bar in their browsers, these URLs, which include the domain names, needs to be translated into an IP address. So DNS servers are responsible for translating those domain names to numeric IP addresses, leading them to correct the webs, leading them to the correct website. So the URL domain names are translated into an IP address, and then the DNS server actually helps the client to access to the correct IP address of the web servers. Hypertext Transfer Protocol is a standard for requests and responses between clients and the server. It's an application layer protocol for transmitting hypermedia documents such as HTML. So HTML, remember that it's a basic script that helps you to retrieve some information. It may be a text header, it might be a text body from the website. So these HTTP protocol actually has some certain requests methods to collect or retrieve information from a web server. The first one is the get method, which is used to retrieve information from the given server using a given URI. And the get method actually requests using get should only retrieve data and should have no other effect on the data. So it doesn't allow the user to do much of a manipulation. And the head function or request, actually it's same as get, but only transfer the status line and header section. The head method is functionally like get, except that the server replies with a response line and headers, but no entity body. The following actually shows a few response and representation headers after a GET request. What you see here is the, for instance, date, which means that the date general HTTP header contains the date and time at which the message originated. And the last modified is actually a response HTTP header contains data and time when the origin server believes the resource was last modified, and it's used as a validator to determine if the resource is the same as the previously stored one. A computer program consists of code that's executed on a computer to perform particular tasks, and this code is actually written by computer programmers. And programming is the process of giving machines a set of instructions that describe how a program should be carried out. The process of creating and embedding scripts in a web page is known as web scripting. A script or a computer script is a list of commands that are embedded in a web page normally and are interpreted and executed by a certain program or scripting engine. Web pages marked up with HTML or XML are largely static documents that doesn't create any interaction between the user and the server. The vast majority of scripting languages have legitimate purposes like checking to see whether a client's computer has an application installed to view embedded content. So the majority of them have a vast majority of them actually have a legitimate purpose. And certain scripts can unfortunately be malicious, and other scripts can be used by law enforcement to identify a suspect on a network who is using a proxy server. So there are a variety of scripts that are useful for both the client and also for the investigator and maybe for the hackers as well. Here you can see an example of a HTML script on a web page, and what we are seeing is a heading here. And when I change the heading right here, now it says this is heading one in the output screen, and I can easily change it and say welcome to our page, and then run the script again, and then it's change the output page, which is not a dynamic page. When you just download or retrieve a web page, you'll just receive the same static page unless it's changed by a dynamic script to make things more interactive. The vast majority of scripting languages have legitimate purposes like checking to see whether a client computer has an application installed to view embedded content like the Audacity or for a sound file. Certain scripts can be malicious, and other scripts can be used by law enforcement to investigate several different cases, such as probing to see if the suspect has been using a proxy, and other actually queries can be made through several scripting languages by the law enforcement personnel. The script can run either on the client side or the server side, and scripting languages like JavaScript, VBScript are embedded in HTML pages to enable dynamic elements and interaction. So the HTML page is a static page, but you can make things more dynamic by adding dynamic scripts into HTML files. For example, a currency or temperature converter here in this example can be created with JavaScript and is interactive because it requests a number and then converts it for the client user. Here on this JavaScript example, actually script. First, we see a static HTML code that says a paragraph, and then also there's a button, and this button actually has a label on it that says try it, and also refers when you click on the button, it actually refers to this function that says paragraph changed. So when you run this actually little script and hit try it, it says it shows paragraph changed on the output screen, which means that the user can dynamically change the content of the HTML file. There are many server-side scripting languages such as Java, Python, PHP, and Ruby, and many others are being used by the computer programmers. DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, is a protocol used to facilitate the automatic propagation of IP addresses, Internet Protocol, to other devices. Without it, configuration must be done manually on each computer to get a different IP address, which is time consuming, and this will certainly be inconvenient for actually the system administrators and also the users. An internet service provider can use DHCP to allow customers to join its network. And similarly, on a home network, a broadband router uses DHCP to add clients to its network. These can include PC, smart TV, and tablet or smartphone in your home network. DHCP is a client-server protocol that provides an IP host with an IP address and other configuration information, such as a subnet mask or default gateway. An examination of DHCP logs will display the MAC addresses of a devices that connected to a server. If an organization uses a DHCP server, then the logs with MAC addresses may be extensive, and the DHCP can be handled by a router and maybe by a server. DHCP server logs can include startup and shutdown, and also DHCP releases and assignments, as well as the requests from the clients. So many information can be collected through the DHCP server in a computer forensic investigation. An IP address is a 32-bit number, and we all use the IP address in our computers, in our cell phones, on actually our smart TVs, in variety of technology that's connected to a network or the internet. We all use an IP address. It uniquely identifies a host such as computer device, printer, and router on a TCP/IP network. IP addresses are normally expressed in dotted decimal format with four numbers separated by periods such as 192, 192, 190, 168, 123.132, which is a binary notation, the 32-bit number. So these 8-bit sections are known as actually octets. The example of IP address then becomes like in these numbers, and when you separate, for instance, the 192, which equals to 11000000. Here in the first octet, and in the second octet, we'll see that 168 is equal to 101010000, so on and so forth. What this means is that this is the actually decimal number, and the equivalent of this decimal number is exactly the number in the first octet, which means that the network or the computer can actually interpret these numbers from or as a binary number, and the usual user needs to convert these decimal numbers into binary in order to understand as the computers interpret through processing. So keep in mind that the decimal numbers separated by periods, and these are the octets converted from binary to decimal notation. A subnet mask is a 32 bits address used to distinguish between a network address and a host address in IP addresses. A subnet mask identifies which part of an IP address is the network address and the host address. So every device has an IP address with two pieces, the client or host address on the server or network address. The network and host addresses can be determined through the information supplied in another 32-bit number called a subnet mask. A subnet mask is, for instance, 255, 255.255, and 0 can be an example to describe a subnet mask. And applying the subnet mask to an IP address splits the address into two parts: an extended network address and a host address. A subnet mask facilitates the communication between segregated networks and the IP head. The subnet mask is 255, 255, and 0 in this example. And it isn't obvious what this number means unless you know 255 in binary notation equals to 8 bits number 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and 1. So the subnet mask is actually here as the 255 equals to 8 ones. Then that we will have 3 octets that only have 8 ones. And in the last part, or in the last octet, we see only zeros equal to 0 right in the last octet. So the subnet mask is equal to this number. Lining up the IP address and the subnet mask together, the network and host portions of the IP address can be separated as this is the IP address in binary number, and this is the subnet mask in binary number. What this means is that the first 3 octets indicates that the IP addresses first 3 octets are actually representing the network address, which is used to find the subnet in which the computer or the device is located. So this actually directly shows that the first 3 octets are helping us to find the network address, and the rest is actually the host address, the physical address, a computer in a network. So after we identified the first 24 bits as the network address, the last 8 bits are identified as the host address. There are several types of routers, but most routers pass data between local area networks and wide area networks. A local area network is a group of connected devices restricted to a specific geographic area. A local area network usually requires a single root router. A wide area network, by contrast, actually is a large network spread out over a vast geographic area. Large organizations and companies that operate in multiple locations across the country, for instance, will need separate local area networks for each location, which then connect to other local area networks to form a wide area network. Because a wide area network is distributed over a large area, it often necessitates multiple routers and switches. So a router is a device that connects 2 or more packet switched networks or subnetworks. It serves 2 primary functions: managing traffic between these networks by forwarding data packets to their intended IP address. So the data packet package is actually sent directly to the intended IP address and allow multiple devices to use the same internet connection. The default gateway is the node on a network that serves as the forwarding host to other networks. A default gateway is the node in a computer network using the Internet Protocol suite that serves as the forwarding host router to other networks. For example, on a home network, the default gateway might be the broadband router in your home network. The data has to exit its own local network by going through the default gateway, which is the router. A network switch is a device that operates at the data link layer of the OSI model. It takes in packets being sent by devices that are connected to its physical ports and sends them out again, but only through the ports that lead to the devices that packets are intended to reach. So there is a direct transfer of data from one actually node in the network to another node, but nothing else. A network switch connects devices within the network and forwards data packets to and from devices. Unlike a router, a switch only sends data to a single device it's intended for, which may be another switch, a router, or a user computer, not the networks of multiple devices. We send dozens of emails, a dozen email every day at least, and maybe get hundreds of emails from many uh, people and many companies, many advertisements, and they are very important. And they are also important for investigation of a cybercrime or any type of crime that actually helps us the connection between the suspect and the victim. And mail system architecture include mail servers, and they handle incoming and outgoing calls or mails, definitely. And email protocols include IMAP, POP, or MIPI, integrate PCs and remote clients. So we use several mail programs such as Outlook, Thunderbird, Apple Mail, and many other applications actually. And we don't also need to exactly use an application. We can just browse. For instance, we can just browse Gmail actually or Hotmail directly from their website and then download and see our emails or send an email. A simple mail transport protocol server is used to send email for a client. The email is subsequently routed to another SMTP server on or other email server. For example, when you use the Microsoft Outlook to send an email, this email is application. This email application informs an SMTP server of the sender and recipient email addresses, as well as the body of the message. When sending an email to another domain, for instance, an email from Hotmail to Yahoo, the SMTP server communicates with a DNS server and requests the IP address of the SMP server. Then, actually, the DNS then responds with the IP address or address for the SMTP server that Yahoo in this example operates. POP3 email protocol is different from the SMTP as it allows receiving email from the server to the user PC, and then the difference between them is that the POP3 downloads all emails to the PC, hence the server no longer maintain the copies. IMAP allows you to access your email wherever you are from any device. A standard email retrieval protocol like POP3. It stores email messages on a mail server and enables the recipient to view and manipulate them as though they were stored locally on their device. An email message internet header provides a list of technical details about the message, such as who sent it, the software used to compose it, and the email servers that is passed through on its way to the recipient. But we don't see these information directly in our email or the email client doesn't directly shows it because we don't really need them, but they have a value for investigation. Email headers can be viewed in variety of ways depending on the client application that you are using to access to your email. For instance, in Outlook headers, You want to view the message headers in Outlook on your desktop, and double click an email message to open it, and then outside of the reading pane, click File, Properties right here, and then headers information appears in the internet headers box. You can highlight the information in that box, such as using the press Ctrl C to copy and paste it into a notepad or Word document to see the entire header at once. An email header can actually give a lot of information for the investigator to identify the suspect, and then also the chain of events in regards to the investigation. So here in this example, we have an email header that starts with a line of email header, the reference to QMail, which refers to mail software running on Unix. This email actually includes unique IDs that would correspond to IDs in the server logs. So in the second line, this lists the IP address of the receiving server, which your email receives the email from the sender, which is as follows right here. And in the third line, you can see the sender's email address, and then in the fourth line, you can see once again this indicates the name of the server receiving the email for the recipient and shows that the SMTP messaging protocol as is actually used in transmission of this email. So in the fifth line here, you see the email address of the recipient along with the date and time the message was received. In the sixth line, the IP address actually here is displayed with domain name of COLCHSOBEOOS dot messaging dot Microsoft.com, and if you type the IP address into the browser, you can see that the Microsoft hosts the servers, that it is located in Chesterfield, Missouri. So you can see the emails bounding from different servers until it reaches to your computer. And you can see on the 16th line, there are several references to bigfish.com, which is the Microsoft Exchange server. You can check this by visiting the HTTP who is, and you can therefore assert that the sender of the email is using the Microsoft Exchange. On the 22nd line, you can see that the Microsoft Forefront, a cloud service to protect companies from viruses, spam, and phishing scam software, has inspected the email, and you can also see that the email was sent by an email server at pace.edu, which corresponds later to the name of the sender -dd at pace.edu. Noted in the line line 41, which is not shown here, but this is important because it appears that this email has not been spoofed by the sender. The domain name system is a naming system for computers and other devices connected to the internet. One function of the name server is to convert domain names to IP addresses. For example, the IP address for the domain name was www.iona.edu is actually 238504, and you may confirm this through the netcraft or by using the command prompt. Also, the DNS servers are also referred to as name servers. Remember that the domain name system is a naming system for computers and other devices connected to the internet. In a DNS record, you can see that the A stands for the address, and this is the most fundamental type of DNS record. It indicates the IP address of a given domain. So, for example, if you pull the DNS records of the cloudflare.com, then you will see the A record currently returns an IP address of 104.17.21.09. We also have a host file that can be associated with the DNS, and the host file is a text file found on Windows that maps host names to IP addresses, and it's an operating system file. The host names may be mapped to both IP4 and IP6 addresses. The domain name resolution may occur on the host side as well as the DNS system. Sometimes the system administrator may modify this file and also the IP mappings. Pretty good privacy encryption is an encryption program that's used for the secure transmission of email and encryption of files, directories, and volumes. This is due to the fact that emails are not actually a secure way of transaction or exchange of information, as they were not initially designed for security purposes. And most widely used email encryption program in the world is the pretty good privacy encryption. And PGP is of particular interest to investigators because it is widely used for secure email communications between dark web marketplace vendors and their customers. And PGP is widely used to prevent eavesdropping by law enforcement. Rather, is a hardware that connects a network to one or more other networks in direct data packets from one node to another node. The router inspects each packet and then directs that packets based on the IP address contained in each packet. So what this means is that each packet actually includes an IP address for the destination computer. And DHCP is a client-server protocol that provides an IP host with an IP address and other configuration information, such as a subnet mask or a default gateway. Static IP addresses assigned to equipment like routers, firewalls, and servers, they have static IP addresses, but on the other side, we have dynamic IP addresses for host computers, including tablets and smartphones they are generally assigned a dynamic IP address. And subnet mask or subnet masking allows an administrator to create multiple networks with a class ABC network. So the subnet mask is used by TCP/IP to locate a specific host on a subnet. Ultimately, the purpose of the subnet mask is to determine where the network part of an address ends and where the individual device address begins. So here in this example, you can see the IP address. When you type in ipconfig in the command prompt of your computer, you'll see that the IP address of your computer in a local area network is 192, 168, 1.2 actually, and then the subnet mask indicates that you have a C-class IP address, and this is the network address, and the host address is right here, and then you're using your router for the default gateway to get your IP address. So in the IP4 IP address space, there are 5 classes, A, B, C, D, and E classes, and each class has a specific range of IP address or addresses, and ultimately this dictates the number of devices you can use on your network. Primarily, class A, B, C are used by the majority of the devices on the internet, and class D and E are for other purposes. For a class A network, which is a major network address range of 1.0.00 and dash 127, 255, 255, 255 in octets. The first octet is actually indicating for the network. And octet 2 and 3 and 4 are for the network manager to divide into subnets and hosts. So class A network addresses have more than 65,536 hosts. Class A network use a default subnet mask of 255, 0, 0, 0, and have 1 to 127 as their first octet. The address, for instance, here 10-10.52.36 and 0.11 is a class A address. It is the first octet in 10, which is between 1 and 126 inclusive. So the class B networks use default subnet mask of 255.255.00, and they range between 128 and 191 as their first octet. The address, for instance, 172, 16, 52, 52, 63 is a class B address, and its first octet is 172, which is between 128 and 191 inclusive. Class C networks use a default subnet mask of 255.255.255.0 and have a range of IP address as their first octet being between 192 to 223. So the address 192.168.123.132 is a class C address. And the first octet we see 192, which is between 192 and 223 inclusive. Just like each house has its own postal address, every device connected on a network has a media access control address name that uniquely identifies it. The MAC address is a 12-digit hexadecimal number that's most often displayed with a colon or hyphen separating every 2 digits or octets, making it easier to read. So in this example, we see a MAC address, and this is typically displayed as a 2C semicolon 54 and semicolon 91, and so on and so forth. So this indicates that the exact address of your computer's network controller has a unique media access control address. So you can easily find out your MAC address on your computer, just on a computer that has a Windows operating system. Press Start plus R on your keyboard, and in the Run window, type in CMD and click OK. At the command prompt, type ipconfig slash all and hit enter, the MAC address for each interface will be listed as physical address. IP6 is the latest version and was developed by the Internet Engineering Task Force. The Internet Assigned Numbers Authority is responsible for the allocation of IP addresses globally. So IP6 version 6 is a 128-bit address and therefore has 2 to 128 address available. So that's a great number. And here's an example of an IP6 address. And NetFlow is a helpful tool for network forensic investigators because it can capture transactions for IP network traffic, which you might have a lot of information about the flow of the traffic from one node to another node. A network intrusion system is a hardware or software used to monitor network traffic for malicious activity. So it can provide alerts when suspicious activity occurs and provide detailed logging information with professional reporting capabilities. It's like a patrol officer actually trying to see if there's any abnormal activity in the precinct. And it gives alerts to the headquarters, might be like the suspicious activity when occurs, provide detailed logging information with professional reporting activities. And it both monitors inbound and outbound traffic. A network-based intrusion detection system detects malicious traffic on a network. NIDs usually require promiscuous network access in order to analyze all traffic. The NIDs operate in promiscuous mode, which means that a network adapter can capture and read all data packets on a particular network. A network intrusion system is used to monitor the traffic on a subnet by matching that network traffic with known attacks. A firewall is a network security device that monitors and filters incoming and outgoing network traffic based on the organization's previously established security goals. And at its most basic, a firewall is essentially the barrier that sits between a private internal network and the public internet. For example, an administrator might prohibit inbound and outbound traffic from IP address from China. The network administrator should add known malware sites to the firewall as blocked websites. So there are different types of firewalls, proxy firewalls, stateful inspection firewalls, unified threat management, and next generation firewalls. A proxy server is a server index and acts as an intermediary between a user and internet connection. A stateless firewall monitors traffic and unblocked packets based on the source and destination addresses or other predetermined values. A stateless firewall filter is often referred to as an access control list, and stateful firewall monitors traffic streams in an end-to-end fashion. And these firewalls can support IP security functions, which include encryption and tunnels. And stateful firewalls are generally better at flagging unauthorized connections. Firewall evidence includes access control, which lists traffic allowed and blocked. And also it includes the packet logs that incorporates origin, the origin, destination, and address, timestamps, packet size, and protocols. An advanced persistent threat is a sophisticated, relentless, coordinated attack on a computer network with a goal of stealing intellectual property. It's a well-known fact that the People's Liberation Army (PLA) has been mandated not only to protect China but also to engage in economic development, which involves economic espionage. Mandiant is just an organization that has disclosed that the Chinese government employs hackers to steal intellectual property from the United States. The Mandiant report has provided details about Unit 61398 in Shanghai, which is manned by hundreds or perhaps thousands of hackers. This intrusion kill chain explains what happens during a sophisticated attack on a network. Network attacks and breaches are not all APTs. Some attackers simply want to cause disruption and destruction, and others want to smash and grab your money and sensitive data. Identifying a compromise can be difficult, especially because an attacker may have computer, may move from computer to computer in an organization, and because an indicator of a compromise can be hard to find. Sometimes the most efficient way to identify a compromise is to compare a potentially infected system with an uninfected system. So if an organization was recently attacked and you can find the computer of an employee who is on a disability leave or on vacation, that computer might not be infected and would make identifying the compromise a lot easier. Another method of identifying a compromise on a Windows machine is to look at restore points on a system. Since the introduction of Windows Vista, Microsoft has used a file backup system called Volume Shadow Copy. Thank you all for listening to the lecture. If you have any questions, feel free to access me from the Blackboard and maybe send an email to me. Thank you all.